Hey there from Bugeye Guys. Today I want to give you a quick tour of something we do, I think, very well. And that's take a Bugeye that is a spectacular car and make it even better than ever. This is a car called Sharpie. It's a stock car. It looks stock. We want to preserve that. It's an authentic looking car, primrose car. Everything about it looks like your basic average Bugeye. We've done so many modifications, both overtly, there you can see them, more of the resto mod, kind of amped up Bugeye. But this is a different kind of set of modifications, and it's pretty cool because they're all about drivability, reliability, improving the machine in ways that, you know, if you're a purist, you know right away these are HS2 carbs. But for most people, they're subtle and kind of slightly hidden upgrades. Like, for example, you know, these are neoprene side cover gaskets that are hidden in there. They were cork gaskets when we got the car. They were pretty well sealed, but while we had all this off, we upgraded this, and that's an example of what I'm talking about. Certainly in a concours event, you don't want a neoprene gasket. On a national level, a local concours, they wouldn't even know. But the point of all this is that we can make these cars so much better. We're just looking for anything and everything that's going to cause our clients a problem and trying to eradicate it here and make a better product as a result. So outwardly, it still looks like the same very stock Bugeye, but wonderful improvements. And I think that's what we all need, the modern consumer. I think that's where the market is headed. How do you produce all the personality of an old car, but with more reliability? And I also think because we've done about 500 of these cars in our shop, we're particularly well suited to take on that quest to push the envelope. The reason I think this is so important is you have all these online auctions and you see these cars that just look spectacular online and everybody's in the audience saying how great they are. If you don't do this stuff, they're not always so great when they show up on your doorstep and you're suddenly challenged. How do I get the choke to work? How do I get all of these features? How come it's overheating? Why doesn't my odometer work? What do I do about this leak or that leak or my charging system? And so our goal is to try to eradicate all of that stuff before this car, which was perfectly fine before we attacked it, but it's another whole animal when it leaves our building. So let's start with this exhaust pipe because that's kind of interesting in and of itself, this manifold. One of the things, for example, that I think is really kind of fascinating. Now, this is a stock 948 manifold. This has been on there since 1960. And this is a terrible design. It's just how they did it. But you have to have the right size cup on the downpipe to hold this. And then there's this clamp that it's not actually like in the modern world where you have clamps that crush things. You don't want to crush this, you would crack it. So you're relying on a perfect union between a cup and a flange, and then this is a closer. And the proof is in the pudding. You see this black stripe right here. That's the leak on this side. And then you also have some carbon on this side, but this is probably the worst leak. So 90% of the time when we drive these cars, when they come in, this is leaking. It's just a bad design and it's very hard to get it right. What happens is you drive into the downpipe on the curb and move the pipe just enough that you open this gap, you have a void, and there's your leak. Moreover, this is about an inch diameter. So again, it worked great, and if you're finding a Bugeye out in the world, it will come like this most of the time, and they work fine. But look at what we did instead. This is a stainless header, and perhaps it's overkill. It's still a 948 engine, but what a more elegant way to have this engine exhale. And it's very exciting for us to be able to add that. It's a stainless header, and more importantly, this header fits just right. Lots of the headers out there are one size fits all, so they drop a little bit too low. You need this thing tucked up to the floor pan, otherwise you lose crucial ground clearance. As you know, these cars are not high to begin with, so unless the header is in the right spot, you're going to be dragging your exhaust and cracking things. So that's one example of one of the improvements. Another big improvement, now let's just stay with the aspiration here. This is a set of brand new HS2 carburetors. And these are so dramatically improved over the original H1 design. In fact, so improved that the Mark II Sprites all came with these carburetors. Same 948 engine, HS2 carburetors came out in 1961 for the Mark II Sprite. So, for example, one nice thing about it is if you look at this choke mechanism, even though it's still kind of kooky relative to modern cars, it's dramatically evolved in relation to the H1, which I'll show you over on the bench. You have a much cleaner float bowl to jet arrangement here where you're not prone to leaks the way you are on the originals. Let's take a look at the original over here. This is an H1 set, 1.125", tiny little inlet, but adequate for the job. I mean, again, it's about 1 inch diameter here as well. You have an 1.125" on the throat behind this screen. But if you look at this choke mechanism on this setup, you've got what amounts to a bobby pin that is uniting these two arms, and this is how the choke is actuated. And you can see the jets come down here. Now, why does that matter? It's actually particularly important because the chokes get stuck all the time. So you pull the choke to start your car when it's cold, it then hangs right here, and you're running at a much richer mixture than perhaps what the tuner intended. And you've got all this play and all these arms and pivots. They're all out in circulation forever, and they're all worn. This is an inferior design and an inferior setup. You add to that the flow from the float bowl to the needle at the bottom of the carb. There's a rubber top hat gasket on both of these, and even when they're made out of Viton, they leak and crack and perish all the time. So we have all these issues around maintenance and reliability that are a problem that we improve with that HS2 set. We come over here to this head, and you've got yet another area of aspiration. It's aspirational to have a better breathing head. And this heart-shaped casting, this is a 629 head, the stock Bugeye head that came from 1958 through 1960 for all the Bugeyes. And this head is really not ideal. The 1098 head, the later generation, has a much bigger chamber and a slightly bigger valve. That's why this is here. We've removed it. This one's fine. It's a little carbonized, but it's doing great. It's doing its job. But the one that's on the car is a 1098 head, bigger combustion chamber, bigger valves, better breathing. So right from the start, we've taken a 948 car and made it breathe a whole lot better with better head, better carburetors, better exhaust header, and then we can also put a better air filter on here. We're using these K&N lifetime filters. They don't impede the airflow when we put them on, so we don't have to retune the car with the air filter, and they're far superior from the mesh screen. Now, you can't put an HS2 carburetor air filter on here without damaging or modifying the threads. It's a very difficult thing to upgrade the air filters on these carbs as well without damaging the carburetor. So that's another nice benefit of changing to the HS2. Other things that we've done. This is the timing chain. Now this is the single row chain. This is basically a bicycle chain. And they shouldn't have, it's a little difficult to tell if you haven't handled a lot of these, but from looking at these, this one is horribly loose. Every link has wear, and all of that wear makes so much slop, and then you get ovalized grooves here where they're worn. So this all had to go. Now, it was working fine, it wasn't making noise, but this gear for another 30 bucks, you get a double row gear and a double row chain and a much stronger setup, also borrowed from the later cars. We adapt that to the front of the engine. And by the way, all of these parts are available in our parts catalog at bugeyeguy.com, bugeyeguiparts.com, and that's where you can add these things to your own car. But I really just wanted to make the point that these are all examples of how we can take a good Bugeye and make it spectacular. And cooling, we're always adding these improved fans and aluminum radiators. Charging, we're adding these generator alternators. This is an alternator hidden inside a generator body. Spin-on oil filters, we're adding those, which are just dramatically easier to live with, easier to maintain. There's a beautiful new filter. Here's a new distributor with an electronic ignition module inside. We've changed the car to negative ground so we can run the LED lights and improve the lighting for daytime running lights, and also brighter brake lights so we can add some degree of safety to these cars. The improvements go on and on. The hydraulic systems are constantly needing maintenance. Usually when you see a master cylinder that starts to look rusty like this, you know it's been out in the world. The moisture that's caused this surface rust is also going through the vented cap here, which is allowing the moisture through the cap into the reservoir, and then that moisture is making cheese, and that cheese is grinding up the seals and destroying the system and allowing the fluid to leak out and potentially having you lose your brakes or your clutch. We have LED lights here. We have an air horn for much more noisy experience if somebody's not paying attention. We have LED headlights. These are very important because they allow the turn signal and park light bulb lenses to stay in place. Here's that new premium master, a new slave, and we cut these to make them easier to install. New rear wheel bearings, that's again another thing that's often overlooked. Tapered front wheel bearings, and even subtle details like this. This is a 0-mile speedometer, completely rebuilt. The one in the car works, but the odometer doesn't, and that's a common problem. So, you know, having purchased about 500 of these cars, these are chronically the issues that we face, and I thought it would be fun for you to see it all displayed here. This is a pretty typical modification rebuild of one of these old British cars that we'll go through. And if you'd like to have this done for your car, we're happy to pick it up and bring it here to Bugeye Guys.